Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be diving in.
Today, we're plunging into quite an ancient narrative. It's a story from the commentary on the Dhammapada that, well, it packs a powerful punch.
It really does.
Our sources for this deep dive, they paint a really vivid picture, From the time of the Buddha, we've got a hunter, a monk, and a sequence of events that, honestly, you probably won't see coming.
That's right. And the core of this specific story, it's known as the Kokasunakhaluddakavatthu. It isn't just some dramatic tale. It's actually told to illustrate a pretty profound truth taught by the Buddha himself.
Okay.
It's all about the principle of cause and effect, specifically the, let's say, serious and often unexpected outcome of harming someone who is genuinely blameless.
Right, the innocent person.
Exactly. And we've got like two different versions of the text guiding us here. One's a more detailed commentary. The other has some helpful translation notes. But they both really converge on this striking lesson.
So what does this all mean for you right now listening in?
Well, our mission today is sort of to walk through this compelling narrative together, understand its central message, and pull out some timeless insights that feel relevant even, thousands of years later.
Yeah, it's almost like a shortcut, isn't it?
Yeah.
A shortcut to understanding a fundamental principle through a very memorable, if pretty intense story.
Definitely intense. And the best way to get to the heart of it is probably just to jump straight into the narrative.
Agreed. Let's do it.
Okay. Let's set the scene. We're at Jetavana. That's the famous monastery where the Buddha spent quite a few rainy seasons.
Right, well-known spot.
And we meet our main character, a man named Koka. He's a hunter, but not just any hunter. The sources call him a Sunakaluddaka.
Which means he specifically hunted with trained dogs. That's key. His dogs were, essential to his livelihood.
Got it. So one morning, Koka is heading out. He's got his bow. His dogs are eager beside him, off to the forest for the day's hunt. Seems like a pretty standard start for a hunter's day. Seems that way, yeah. But then his path crosses with a monk. And this monk is simply doing his alms round. Just a peaceful daily activity, collecting food in the village. Nothing unusual.
But Koka's reaction, it's immediate and, sharp?
It's intensely negative. Koka sees the monk, and his mind just instantly goes to a dark place. He thinks, Kokasunakhaluddakavatthu.
Which means?
Our sources tell us it essentially means, I've seen an inauspicious one. He's immediately convinced that this sighting has ruined his day, that because he saw this monk first thing, he's going to catch absolutely nothing.
Wow. So he's instantly blaming the monk for his anticipated bad luck before anything's even happened?
Precisely. He projects all his fear of failure onto this totally blameless person, and filled with the sudden ill will, he doesn't even bother to speak to the monk.
Just turns away.
Just turns away, heads towards the forest, probably seething about this perceived bad omen.
Meanwhile, the monk, completely unaware of the hunter's internal, turmoil,
Has no idea.
finishes his alms round, goes back to the monastery. Just a normal, uneventful morning for him.
Right. A picture of just blameless activity. Now, Koka goes out, hunts all day, just as he planned, and just as he feared.
He catches nothing.
Absolutely nothing. His hunt is a complete failure.
And how does he react to that confirmation of his superstition?
Well, this is where the story takes a really dark turn. Koka is returning, empty-handed, frustrated, probably feeling totally justified in his earlier anger, right? And who does he see again?
Oh no, not the same monk.
The very same monk, returning from the village, presumably.
You can almost feel the rage building. He must see this as absolute proof.
Exactly. His initial irritation just explodes into full-blown fury. He thinks, today, because I saw this inauspicious one, I went to the forest and caught nothing. Now he has appeared before me again. I will have my dogs eat him.
That's such an extreme leap. From bad luck sighting to I'm going to have my dogs kill you, fueled by pure blame.
It is a terrifying escalation, and he acts on it immediately. He signals his dogs, sets them on the monk.
And the monk.
The monk, understandably terrified, pleads with him, don't do this, lay follower, using that respectful term, even then.
But Koka is just fixated. He's convinced the monk is the source of his misfortune, and now he deserves punishment. He drives the dogs forward.
Yeah, he's beyond reason. The monk, in self-preservation, reacts quickly. He scrambles up the nearest tree, finds a spot just out of the dog's immediate reach, maybe about a man's height up.
So he's temporarily safe?
From the dogs, yes. They surround the base of the tree, barking, unable to get to him. But Koka, he isn't finished.
He's determined not to let the monk escape what he feels is like deserved punishment. This is where the cruelty really escalates, isn't it?
It does, horribly.
Huh.
Koka goes right up to the tree and declares the monk won't get away even up there. Then, using the tip of his arrow, he starts to deliberately pierce the soles of the monk's feet.
Piercing his feet while he's trapped in the tree. Repeatedly. Even as the monk pleads.
Yes, the sources are specific. He repeatedly pierces the soles of both feet with the arrow tip, completely ignoring the monk's pleas. It's just a gruesome act of calculated pain, payback for a perceived wrong that wasn't a wrong at all.
Ugh. The monk's suffering must have been just immense.
It was. The text says his body felt like it was on fire from the pain. It became so overwhelming that he actually lost awareness.
Passed out from the pain.
Or just lost conscious control, yeah. And this detail is absolutely critical. The text says he lost awareness and didn't even notice his robe falling.
His robe fell. And Koka was standing right below him, focused on causing pain.
Exactly. As the monk's outer robe came loose, it just fell straight down from the tree and landed directly on Koka. Covered his head and body as he stood there, arrow tip likely still in hand or nearby.
And the dogs.
Oh my.
Here's the shocking immediate consequence of Koka's own action. The dogs, whipped into a frenzy around the tree, saw the robe fall.
They just saw movement, the robe.
In their trained killer instinct, they mistook the robe-covered figure for the monk they were meant to attack. They thought it was the monk who had fallen from the tree.
Yes. Our sources say they thought the monk has fallen, and in their eagerness, their programmed aggression, they rushed into the robe, tearing at and eating their own master.
Oh, wow.
They devoured Koka right there. The text says they left only a pile of bones.
His own tools of violence turned back on him in the most horrific, immediate way possible. This feels like the very definition of that dust against the wind idea happening in, like, real time.
It's a powerful, incredibly literal illustration of the principle, isn't it? The ill will and violence he directed outwards, using his dogs as the instruments, it just rebounded and consumed him entirely.
So what happened next? What about the monk?
Yeah, the dogs, emerging from that gruesome scene under the robe, looked up and saw the monk still alive in the tree.
He must have regained consciousness by then.
Presumably, yeah. The text says the monk, maybe seeing what had happened or just reacting, broke off a dry stick and threw it down at them. Seeing the monk alive, the dogs instantly realized their fatal error. They knew they had just eaten their master, and they immediately turned and ran off into the forest. Dispersed.
So the hunter, consumed by malice and blaming the blameless, was destroyed by the very force he unleashed, while the target of his ill will was ultimately, physically, unharmed by that specific destructive consequence directed at him.
Precisely. It's stark. But the story isn't quite finished there. There's an aftermath for the monk, too.
Right, because even though he was the victim, witnessing something like that and being involved just by circumstance, that must have been deeply unsettling.
It was. He felt doubt and remorse afterwards. He started questioning his own state. He thought, he perished by entering my robe. Is my virtue healthy? Do I still possess the state of a renunciant?
Ah, so he worried that somehow maybe the robe falling, his presence, somehow implicated him or, like, tainted his own spiritual purity.
Exactly. He was worried about his own monastic standing, his own virtue, a very scrupulous reaction, you could say.
So he needed clarity. He went to the Buddha.
Yes, that's the next step. He went to the Buddha, recounted everything that had happened right from the beginning, and laid out these doubts, these questions about his virtue and status.
And how did the Buddha respond to that?
The Buddha immediately reassured him, no hesitation. He said, Bhikkhu, addressing him as a monk, your virtue is healthy. You possess the state of a renunciant. He made it absolutely clear the monk was blameless in this.
Okay, that's crucial.
And he explained Koka's fate. He clarified that Koka met his ruin not because of the monk, not because of the robe, but specifically because he had harmed a person who was blameless. End of story. Cause and effect.
So the Buddha confirmed the principle that the event itself illustrated so dramatically. And I think you mentioned the Buddha didn't say this was the first time this kind of thing had happened to Koka.
That's right. To deepen the lesson, the Buddha stated that Koka's ruin by harming a blameless person wasn't just a one-off event in this life. He said this pattern, this consequence, had happened to Koka in the past as well, due to similar kinds of actions.
And to really drive that point home, he told another story, didn't he? A past life story.
Exactly. He brought in this parallel tale, a Jataka-style story, about a doctor in a past life. This doctor was traveling, hungry, couldn't find any work.
Okay, already in a tough spot, like Koka feeling frustrated about his hunt.
Yes, but his reaction to that tough spot was, well, cruel and manipulative. He saw children playing near a village gate and cooked up this malicious plan. He thought, I will have a snake bite these children, then I can treat them and get food.
Oh, that's incredibly dark. Creating the emergency just so he could profit from fixing it.
It really is. So he spotted a snake with its head sticking out of a tree hollow. He showed it to the children and really deceptively called it a baby starling, encouraging them to catch it.
Wow. Luring children into potentially lethal danger for his own gain.
Yes, but just like Koka's plan with the dogs, it backfired instantly and quite directly.
How so?
One boy, maybe bolder or quicker than the others, actually grabbed the snake firmly by the neck and pulled it out. Then he immediately realized it wasn't a bird, it was a snake. He screamed, terrified, and instinctively just threw it.
Let me guess. Right at the doctor.
Right onto the head of the doctor who was standing nearby, probably waiting to swoop in, just like the robe falling on Koka. It's the same pattern, isn't it? The harmful instrument or the consequence coming right back to the perpetrator.
It's a striking parallel, yeah. What happened to the doctor?
The snake, likely agitated and defensive, wrapped around the doctor's collarbone, bit him firmly, and killed him right there on the spot. Instant karma, you might say.
So the Buddha's making it crystal clear here. This isn't just random misfortune hitting Koka in this life. It's presented as a recurring consequence, deeply tied to this specific type of action, harming the blameless out of malice or self-interest.
Absolutely. He explicitly connected the two stories, saying this Koka, the hunter, also met ruin by harming a blameless person in the past, just like that doctor did. It highlights a persistent karmic pattern linked to this specific behavior.
And this brings us neatly to the core teaching that summarizes this entire principle, the verse the Buddha recited at the end.
Right. This verse from the Dhammapada itself, it just crystallizes the lesson shown in both the hunter story and the doctor story. It goes, whoever harms a person who is harmless, pure, and blameless.
Okay, harming the harmless, pure, and blameless.
Evil returns to that fool like fine dust thrown against the wind.
Like fine dust thrown against the wind.
Yeah.
That's such a powerful, almost visceral image, isn't it? You immediately know what that feels like.
You really do. And it's the perfect analogy for this. Imagine standing outside on a windy day and throwing a handful of powder or fine dust directly into a strong gust that's blowing right back at you.
Yeah, it comes right back in your face.
Exactly. Where does that dust go?
Yeah.
It doesn't just harmlessly sail away or land on something else way out there. It instantly blows back onto you, the person who threw it, stings your eyes, gets in your mouth.
You become the immediate recipient of what you just threw out there.
Precisely. The verse is saying that evil intent, harmful action, when it's directed at someone who is truly blameless, someone who isn't retaliating, isn't causing harm themselves, isn't deserving of it, it doesn't actually stick to the target. It doesn't contaminate or destroy that blameless person in the way the perpetrator intended.
Yeah.
Instead, because of this fundamental principle of, let's call it karmic justice or cause and effect, it rebounds, it bounces back, often with force, onto the perpetrator.
And the sources give us some specific details about what harmless, pure, and blameless really means here, right? It's not just like casual innocence, it's deeper.
It is a deeper state, yes.
Yeah.
The commentary breaks it down. Harmless, apaduhasa, means not harming oneself or any other being. It implies a state of active nonviolence, non-malevolence.
Okay.
Person, or asapasasa, simply refers to a being, the one receiving the action. Harms, dusatapadusati, means to transgress against, to wrong, to act with ill will or violence towards. Pure, sudasa, means blameless, or without offense, they haven't actually done anything to warrant this negative action aimed at them. And blameless, amagahasa, means without defilements. This points to a state of inner purity, a lack of inner corruption or negativity that might otherwise attract or deserve negative consequences.
So it's really about directing harm towards someone who embodies this state of innocence, non-harming, and inner purity. Doing that specifically is what creates this immediate, almost guaranteed negative blowback for the person doing the harming.
Precisely. It's like throwing something at a perfectly reflective, frictionless surface. It just comes right back. And the sources clarify that this return of evil, this dust against the wind, comes back as suffering. It's the consequence, the vipaka, of the action.
And it can happen fast.
It can manifest quickly in this very life, like Koka's horrific end, the doctor's sudden death. Or it can accumulate and manifest in future states, sometimes described as very difficult realms or hells. Koka is presented as that stark, real-time, this life example.
Got it. And the story wraps up with a very different outcome for the monk. The one who was the target but remained blameless.
Yes, the positive culmination for him. The text says that at the end of this discourse, after hearing the Buddha's explanation and receiving that crucial reassurance, the monk attained arhatship.
Full liberation.
Complete liberation, the highest goal. And the sources also note that the teaching, this whole explanation, was beneficial for everyone else in the assembled audience, too. They all learned from it.
So the one who cultivated purity and harmlessness found ultimate peace and freedom, while the one consumed by blame and ill will was effectively destroyed by his own hand, by his own actions, rebounding. It's a really potent message.
It really is. And, while the story is ancient, it's dramatic, maybe even shocking in parts, its core message about the consequences of our actions, especially those rooted in anger, blame, ill will, it feels incredibly relevant today, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It challenges us, I think, to look inward first when things go wrong, rather than immediately pointing fingers outwards. Koka was utterly convinced the monk was the cause of his bad hunt. But the real cause of his ultimate demise was his own violent, blame-filled reaction to his frustration and bad luck.
And it really highlights the strength, maybe even a kind of inherent protection that comes from cultivating inner purity and harmlessness. The monk wasn't protected by physical force or, sheer luck in the end. The teaching implies he was protected by his own state of blamelessness. The evil thrown at him just didn't stick. It simply rebounded onto the thrower.
So maybe the next time you feel that surge of frustration, that powerful urge to assign blame immediately or direct some real ill will towards someone else, maybe remember the story of Koka the hunter.
Yeah, and that vivid image from the verse. Evil returning to the fool like fine dust thrown against the wind.
It prompts you to think about where that impulse to lash out or blame is really coming from, and to consider the possibility that directing all that negativity outwards might just be setting up a kind of boomerang that's already heading right back towards you.
And conversely, perhaps focusing on cultivating a state of harmlessness, of purity, of trying not to cause offense within yourself, maybe that's actually a path to a different kind of safety, a different kind of well-being altogether.
Something worth reflecting on, definitely, as you navigate your own day.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for diving deep with us into this quite intense but very meaningful story.